Hi, and welcome back to this free-for-all Friday edition of Focal Point on AFR Talk. Brian Fisher is my name. You are listening to Focal Point, the home of muscular Christianity on Conservative Talk Radio. Number to call, by the way, and you may want to call and ask questions of our guest. Chris McDaniel is my guest in studio, State Senator Chris McDaniel. He's agreed graciously to be on with us for both segments in this last half hour. So Chris and I will talk here in the first segment, and then you'll be able to call and ask questions of him in the second segment. The number is 888-589-8840, 888-589-8840. Senator Chris McDaniel, welcome to Focal Point. Again, good to have you back.
It's great to be here. Thanks for having me.
And wanted to talk with you. Let's just jump right into what you're doing here in Tupelo.
Yes.
Got some news that you're going to be breaking today.
We do, absolutely. What we have announced is basically the launch of the United Conservatives Fund, which is a fund and a PAC and an organization that will aid and assist conservatives in overcoming many of the obstacles that have hit us in the past, from a financing standpoint, from a fundraising, or just a structural standpoint. It's time for conservatives to be heard. That's social conservatives, fiscal conservatives, those that value liberty. We have to find a way to unify once and for all. So not only can we defeat the Democrats and the liberals of our country, but the ideology of liberalism or big government that has also infected the Republican Party. It's time for a change. We've seen the Republicans, I'm a proud Republican, but we've seen that party move away from what we consider to be traditional conservatism. We want to return the greatness of those traditions to the party, hence making a difference in this country and the state.
You know, I played a soundbite yesterday from Ted Cruz, and he said, look, we are not going to win in 2016, looking at the presidency, the race for the Oval Office. We are not going to win if we campaign from the mushy middle. And he referred to Ronald Reagan, as you have. We can't paint with pale pastels if we hope to win these elections. We have to paint with bold colors, and that's kind of the dimension that you think has been lacking, and maybe we need to coordinate, harness some of that energy.
Absolutely, and he's on to something there. We've seen throughout history where when people run as strong conservatives, people who are Christian in their faith, people who value the Constitution, people who value liberty, when they run unashamedly as conservatives, they do well. Ronald Reagan, for example, they told us in 76 he was too extreme, and so they gave us Ford. In 80, they told us he was too radical, and Reagan won a landslide because he ran on clear conservative principles. In 84, he ran again on clear conservative principles, and he won another landslide. And yet the party, for whatever reason, keeps wanting to place in our midst these moderate-minded candidates. For example, nothing wrong with these men. I'm sure they're fine men, but they're not conservatives. Bob Dole, they told us he was the only one who could win. John McCain, they told us he was the only one who could win. Mitt Romney, they told us he was the only one who could win. We need more Ted Cruz's and less John McCain's, with all due respect. Ted Cruz and Mike Lee fight with principle. They fight with passion. They fight with conviction. They understand the sensitive situation we're in. So that's the type of conservative we're looking for, someone who's not so interested in self, but interested in an ideology and the people of this state and this country.
You know, I saw a brief interview with Henry Barber speaking for the Republican National Committee, and he's got his roots here in Mississippi, part of the Barber clan. And I don't remember who he was talking to, but basically he was saying, look, as Republican Party, we have to navigate away from these pesky social issues.
Yeah.
We've got. They were talking about the March for Life. They were talking about the failure of that unborn, that fetal pain bill that would eliminate abortions after 20 weeks of development. And he said, look, we just got to get away from all those pesky social issues, if we're going to win elections. And what I'm hearing from you is you think maybe it's actually the opposite of the direction that we need to go.
Conservatism, as traditionally understood, that is Goldwater conservatism or Reagan conservatism, understands that traditional values and fiscal restraint go hand in hand. You can't abandon one and expect the other to thrive. The Barbers are dead wrong about this. They like this quote or this phrase that somehow purity is a loser in politics. The left doesn't believe that. The left fights for their purity. They fight for their principles, and they've been winning with their principles. Barack Obama ran as an unashamed, clear liberal, and he won. Our candidates need to do the same thing. I'm tired of people in the mushy middle. I'm tired of the moderates trying to talk about compromise and bipartisanship. What we should be talking about is there are certain elements of our beliefs that should never be compromised. Our Constitution is not subject to compromise. Your civil liberties are not subject to compromise. The conservatives have to learn to be a party of bold colors. I should say the Republicans have to learn to be a party of bold colors. And so when I hear things like purity is a loser or purity is problematic, To me, that's just another phrase for surrender. It's another phrase for giving up. Look, this country is in bad shape. We're $18 trillion in debt. Many of us don't recognize the country that we inherited. At what point will strong men and women begin to stand again and fight for their convictions? We're tired of watching politicians go to Washington. They tell us one thing when they're home. They go to D.C. and they vote another way. We want principled leadership with integrity. That's what we're looking for. I think it's willing to fight for it. I think we're all willing to fight for it.
You know, Senator McDaniel, you ran for the state Senate here, or for the United States Senate here in Mississippi, a hotly contested encounter with Senator Thad Cochran. You actually won the majority of the Republican votes in the Republican primary. And I think I told you about my encounter with Austin Barber on Twitter. He was kind of raking me over the coals for some of the kind things I'd said about you after the primary was over. And I just said, look, Austin, I'm going to support the Republican candidate that got the most Republican votes in the Republican primary.
Sure.
Never heard from him again. But you had a campaign that was basically sabotaged by the GOP establishment.
That's
that
right.
came in and, in my mind, resorted to unethical and probably even illegal tactics in order to defeat you. So when you talk about coming up against the power of the establishment, you're speaking from experience here.
Absolutely. We've seen the underbelly of the beast. We understand who they are and what they're doing, and we disagree with their policies. We disagree with their direction for the party. Here's what I know. On June the 24th, they moved more than 40,000 Democrats to the polls in a Republican primary. That's not growing the base. Republican primaries exist so Republicans can select the nominee for United States Senate. Well, we won the Republican base that night with 60% of the vote. Instead of being honorable men, instead of doing the right thing, they race baited. They called me a racist. They called all conservatives and Tea Party members racist. Then they pushed about $500,000 of cash onto the streets, and they moved Democrats into the polling locations. That is not a party of integrity that allows something like that. The people who would behave in that manner are not men and women that are the principled Republicans that we need in leadership positions. I can't imagine Reagan behaving that way. I can't imagine others in our party, the founders of our party, behaving that way. And yet these men and women are so desperate to maintain power and control, they were willing to do anything to sacrifice me. I thought I used to be their buddy. I thought I used to be their friend. But in politics, you find that power is so intoxicating, they were willing to character assassinate me under any circumstances. Look, they can't defend what they did. They know what they did. The people of Mississippi know what they did. The people of the country know what they did. And you would think that at least some members of the party and the leader apparatus would condemn what they did. But the silence is deafening. When you see evil, you speak out against it. When you see these problems, you speak out against it. And the statewide Republicans, the elected office holders, have been silent on this issue. I think that's problematic.
Talking here with State Senator Chris McDaniel from the state of Mississippi. And Senator, you're in Tupelo today. In fact, you will be in Tupelo tonight at Tupelo City Hall at 6 p.m. You'll be at the Trustmark Park Holiday Inn Monday night at 6 p.m. in Pearl, Mississippi. Tuesday night, 6 p.m. at the Fill-In Station Grill in South Haven. On Thursday at 6 p.m., you'll be at the Forest County Chancery Building in Hattiesburg. Friday, 6 p.m., you'll be on the Mississippi Gulf Coast with a location yet to be determined. And you're on this five-city swing to introduce the United Conservatives Fund. And this is part of the outgrowth of what happened with your primary. And so explain to us, and again, I want to be clear to our listening audience, we're a 501c3, so I'm not going to ask you to donate to this organization. It's a PAC. But if you want more information, we will let you know what the website is so you can get more information about it. But Senator McDaniel, tell us what the United Conservatives Fund is and what's distinctive about it.
Here's the idea. The conservative movement in our state is comprised basically of 5 different elements. We have libertarians on one side, social conservatives on the other. In the middle, you've got Tea Parties and conservative coalitions, and basically your old traditional fiscal and traditional conservatives. We want to unite those groups once and for all. We see the distinctions and the divisions within those groups as being problematic. So here's the idea. We find supporters or representatives from each of those groups. We bring them onto a board of directors. Those men and women will control the mechanism of the United Conservative Fund. They'll control it in a way that messages around 3 core components, just 3. The first is decentralization of authority. That means constitutionalism. That means limited government so your rights are protected. Number 2, federalism. The idea that if the central government does not have power specifically delegated to it pursuant to Article 1, Section 8, then all other powers belong to the people and the states respectively. And 3, a high moral tone in voluntary transactions. We know capitalism works. We know America works when it's allowed to function with liberty. We want people to have a high moral tone in their relationships with each other, a tone that's not coerced or forced, but is the nature of how we choose to live our lives voluntarily. We do that, and those 3 elements, combine them, focus them, and message around them. By messaging, we're able to control the battlefield once and for all, because we know the messaging right now is tilted toward the left. Most of the major state newspapers are leftist. Many of the radio stations are leftist. You're a great contrast with what we see, in that you are strongly Christian and strongly conservative. Your message needs to be heard. United Conservative Fund will allow these messages to be heard.
Number to call if you want to ask State Senator Chris McDaniel some questions about this new venture, this new effort, is 888-589-8840, 888-589-8840. Give us a call. We'll try to get as many of your questions to Senator McDaniel in the last segment as we can. You know, and Senator McDaniel, it seems like this is really something that is new. I may wind up using the last minute here, so I may have to hold you over for your reaction.
Okay.
But, you know, you've got, as you pointed out, you have these 5 kind of pockets of energy in the conservative movement. And they don't always necessarily talk to each other. They obviously don't even agree with each other on some issues. Right. And so the challenge, and this may be the question I'll leave for you to answer when we come out of the break, the challenge is, how do we get these disparate groups who do share some fundamental values and convictions that you shared with us? They do share these fundamental convictions about decentralization, about honoring the Constitution, about a moral tone. Mm-hmm. How are you going to work together to get these people to harness their energy in a common direction? And could this be a model, a template for every state in the union? Focal Point AFR Talk. We'll be right back. Stay with us.
AFR Talk. You're listening to Focal Point with Brian Fisher. Focal Point with Brian Fisher.
Hi, and welcome back to this free-for-all Friday edition of Focal Point on AFR Talk. Brian Fisher is my name. Number to call with a question for State Senator Chris McDaniel is 888-589-8840, 888-589-8840. Senator McDaniel with us live in studio to announce the formation of a new political action committee. And again, we're not raising funds for that, but if you'd like more information about the United Conservatives Fund, you can go to unitedconservativesfund.com, unitedconservativesfund.com, and get more information about what this is all about. And number to call if you have a question for Senator McDaniel is 888-589-8840. That is the number. Now, Senator McDaniel, I asked you the question before the break. This is kind of like herding cats when you've got, because conservatives, libertarians, social conservatives, Tea Party types tend to be very independent.
Sure. They
think for themselves. They act for themselves. How are you going to meet the challenge? I mean, the possibilities of harnessing that energy are fantastic. How are you going to do it?
You have to focus on the things that unite us as opposed to the things that divide us. Now, granted, you're right. There are 5 distinct elements within the party. And I want to be clear about this, I'm a proud Republican. But first and foremost, I'm a conservative. I'm a conservative that joined the Republican Party because for a time it was the conservative choice. We look to make it the conservative choice again. Now, how do you make all these groups come together and fight together? One basic understanding. Until we can unite around those 3 core principles, that is decentralization or constitutionalism, until we recognize the proper laboratories for these experiments should be in the states and not the federal government, until we recognize that a high moral tone is essential, we're never going to get anyone that can effectuate the change that any of those groups desire to make a real difference. We have to first win elections based on those principles. when we get people in office that believe in those principles, they begin to return those powers back to the states and return those powers back to the people, then we'll start discussing those issues that divide us. But right now we're wasting our time because we can't get to those issues because right now the federal government controls almost every aspect of the choice-making process. Return the powers back.
So is one of the hopes here, Senator McDaniel, that maybe this model, United Conservatives Fund, UnitedConservativesFund.com if you want more information, that maybe this could serve as a template or a model that other states could also adopt and use?
Absolutely. In fact, this will start in Mississippi, but it will spread. It will grow. We have to find ways to unite strong-minded, resilient conservatives against any ideology that seeks to centralize authority, any ideology that attempts to take away your civil liberties, any ideology that tells us that Washington has all the answers. We know that Washington doesn't have the answers. The people have the answers, and government should be close to the people. That's the aim of UCF, to return government to the people where it probably belongs, and to do it through strong messaging and strong connections across the state of Mississippi. This is still ground zero. This is still the fight. Because of the way they stole the election, because of the way they behaved, because of the race baiting, because of the party raiding, the entire country is still looking at Mississippi and they're saying, how did that happen? We're going to respond and we're going to fix it and make sure it can never happen again.
And for our listening audience, a privilege to be a part of the breaking of this news. Politico's done a story on this. Breitbart broke this story this morning. Bloomberg is doing a story on this. Senator McDaniel will be interviewing with Sean Hannity next week. So you have an opportunity to be in on the kind of ground floor of understanding what's going on with this movement. UnitedConservativesFund.com for more information. Let's go to the phones. Let's begin with Ron in Garland, Texas. Ron, you've got a question for Senator McDaniel.
Yes. Well, actually, just a quick comment. I just, first of all, it's a honor to talk to you, Mr. McDaniel. What happened to you in Mississippi, I just couldn't believe. I think your idea is great because I'll just leave it at this. I was a union man for 18 years, and the only way we could get anything done was band together. And I guess that's on the same kind of principles as what you're talking about, is just getting going against the left side.
Absolutely, and thank you for those comments. You know, it boils down to this. It's not so much a fight between left and right. It's a fight between right and wrong. We're either going up toward liberty and up toward freedom, or we're going down toward statism and more government control. We have to find ways to unify our resources, find ways to fight intelligently, and to find ways to win. This is a good first step, and I appreciate your comments. I know a lot of folks from Texas supported our campaign, and it means a lot to hear from you, so thank you very much.
You know, it's interesting, Senator McDaniel, looking at our call screen here, we've got calls from Texas, Virginia, and Ohio about a story that started in Mississippi. So It indicates that this idea of coordinating this kind of energy, harnessing it, people all over the country are interested in how this experiment is going to work out. Let's go to Gene in Toledo, Ohio. Gene, welcome to Focal Point with Brian Fisher and my guest, State Senator Chris McDaniel. What's on your mind? Gene, are you with me?
Yeah.
Yeah, go right ahead.
Hey, I was listening to the radio. I agree with you guys 100% most of the time, all the time. And you talk about pulling your money together. We already have a conservative group, the Heritage Foundation, run by Jim Schmidt, who's they already have a fund that's set up to help out the conservatives in the country. So I was just wondering if we could keep our money pooled all in one spot instead of breaking it off into 3-4 different groups.
That's a fair question, and let me try to distinguish. The groups that you've mentioned, the Senate Conservative Fund, we're very much in favor of. We love their leadership. We've worked with them in the past. They were instrumental in our campaign. The Club for Growth, same thing. Great people, instrumental in our campaign. The Madison Project, great group. And you do have these groups, and they handle or approach these issues slightly differently. Our primary focus is unification and messaging to level the playing field here in Mississippi and throughout the Southeast. We're going to be working with these groups and finding strong conservative candidates. And what this does is going to make it easier for all of us to do our job once we're focused on one core mission. We value those groups. We are not in competition with those groups. We are working together with those groups, and we look forward to the future.
All right, Gene, thank you for the call. Let us go to Michael, Houston, Texas. Michael, Houston, Texas, you have a question for my guest, State Senator Chris McDaniel.
Yes, I do. Thank you, Brian. Thank you, Senator McDaniels, for your service.
Thank you, sir.
My question is that we've tried this in the past, and it's just become a divisive problem for the Republican Party. Why can't there be a concerted effort towards taking over the leadership of the party through a conservative movement, and we can have one movement going forward? We've lost a lot of elections trying to do this in the past. Why do we feel like this is going to work in the future?
Because in part, this is about changing the established order. We recognize, if you watch the election here in Mississippi, we saw the Washington establishment come down, put all of their resources into a race and do everything they could to establish the true or to destroy the true conservative in the race. It's going to be different because we do have a widespread approach, and the end game naturally is change in Washington, D.C. The end game naturally has to be that, because if you can't change Washington, D.C., you can't change the country. But that change has to begin locally first. Our primary focus as conservatives has to be the grassroots. We have to energize the grassroots. We have to mobilize the grassroots. We have to have them work together to effectuate change from the bottom up. The problem we've had over the years is we tend to want to effectuate change from the top down. If you wake up the people of this country and you involve them in a great movement of conservatism, it can start right here in Mississippi, sweep across the Southeast, and change the entire dynamic of this country. But it has to start with the people. And that's why our group's going to be successful. We're among the people. We're using the machine we created during my campaign to take the machine, apply it to the people, change them, engage them, and help them effectuate the change, not Washington, D.C.
Last call of the hour. Let's go to Bob in Prairieville, Louisiana. Bob, Prairieville, Louisiana. Do you have a question for my guest, State Senator Chris McDaniel?
Absolutely. Thank you, Chris McDaniel. I'm the founding director of the Tea Party of Louisiana with 15,000 members, and we really supported every bit of your campaign and backed every bit of your fight. And I want you to know that we're behind you, and it's time that I'm a real follower of Brian Fisher and AFR, and, it's time we get our Christian heritage back, our Christian right back. It's time for people to speak up and talk. It's time for us to take over the politics in this land like our forefathers did. I want to know whatever I can do to join that effort and start a movement here because our past efforts with the Tea Party just falls on deaf ears with these establishment Republicans.
Great, Bob. Thank you for the call. Got about 60 seconds, Chris.
That's a perfect comment from a patriot in Louisiana. He's talking about action. He's talking about engagement. He's talking about making a difference. The biggest thing that threatens conservatives in this country is apathy. We've got to wake up. Christians have got to wake up. Liberty lovers have got to wake up, and we've got to find a way to win fights. Shake off the apathy. Shake off the ignorance. Learn, engage, and change this country before it's too late.
And if you're interested in Senator McDaniel's message and this new movement, if you happen to live in Northeast Mississippi, Tupelo area, he'll be appearing tonight at Tupelo City Hall, 6 p.m. Monday night, 6 p.m., Trustmark Park Holiday Inn in Pearl, Mississippi. Tuesday night at the Fill-In Station Grill in South Haven, Mississippi. Thursday night, 6 p.m., Forest County Chancery Building in Hattiesburg. And Friday night on the Gulf Coast, a location yet to be determined. Well, Senator McDaniel, I'll have the privilege of being there with you tonight at Tupelo City Hall as you kick this thing off. And exciting possibilities. I want to thank you for taking time to drop by and visit with us in person. And
yes, sir.
God bless you, and God bless your family and your future.
Thank you, sir. It means a lot. Thank you very much.
State Senator Chris McDaniel has been my guest. That's it for this Friday edition of Focal Point on AFR Talk. Here's a word to take you into your weekend. Now may the God of peace himself sanctify you completely, and may your whole spirit and soul and body be kept blameless at the coming of our Lord Jesus Christ. He who calls you is faithful. He will surely do it. Bow low before God, stand tall before man, stand in the gap, and never forget We are fighting a winnable war. We'll see you on Monday.